when my grandpa squeezed my hand on his deathbed and whispered, "I'm so glad you finally got the watch, Michael." Just like I promised, I felt my blood run cold. I had never seen any watch. I had never received any watch. And the way my Aunt Sarah's face went white, and my dad suddenly found the floor fascinating, told me everything I needed to know. Someone had been lying to a dying man. Before I dive into this story that changed everything I thought I knew about my family, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and if you're new here, subscribe, because you're about to hear how I uncovered a family conspiracy that had been brewing for decades. Now let me take you back to that sterile hospital room where my world turned upside down. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm 25 years old, and I thought I knew my family. I thought I understood the dynamics, the relationships, the unspoken rules. I was wrong about everything. The steady beep of the heart monitor had been the soundtrack to our vigil for 3 days. Grandpa William had been fighting lung cancer for 8 months, and we all knew this was it. The whole family had gathered. My dad Robert, my Aunt Sarah, my Uncle David, and me. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and impending grief. Grandpa had been drifting in and out of consciousness, occasionally mumbling words we couldn't quite catch. The morphine made his thoughts scattered, but when his eyes opened and locked onto mine that Tuesday evening, they were clearer than they'd been in weeks. "Michael," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the medical equipment. "Come closer, son." I leaned in, my ear almost touching his lips. His hand, thin and cold, gripped mine with surprising strength. "I'm so glad you finally got the watch," he said, each word deliberate despite his weakness. "The Patek Philippe, just like I promised when you graduated college. You're taking good care of it, aren't you?" My heart stopped. I pulled back slightly to look at his face, thinking maybe the medication was causing hallucinations, but his eyes were focused, hopeful, waiting for my response. "Grandpa," I whispered back. "What watch? I never received any watch." The change in the room was immediate and terrifying. My Aunt Sarah, who had been knitting in the corner chair, dropped her needles. The clicking sound echoed in the sudden silence. My dad, who had been scrolling through his phone, froze completely. Uncle David cleared his throat loudly, like he was trying to cover up the tension. Grandpa's face crumpled in confusion. "What do you mean? Sarah said she gave it to you months ago, right after graduation. The 1952 Patek Philippe Calatrava. It was my father's, and his father's before that. Worth more than—" His voice trailed off as he looked around the room, seeing our faces. "Who told you I had it?" I asked, my voice louder than intended. Aunt Sarah stood up abruptly. "Dad, you're confused. The medication is making you—" "No," Grandpa interrupted with more force than I'd heard from him in weeks. "I asked you specifically to give Michael the watch after his graduation. You said you did. You said he loved it." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, could feel the weight of secrets pressing down on the room. My dad was staring at his sister with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure, cold suspicion. "Sarah," my dad said slowly, "where is the watch?" My aunt's face had gone from pale to ashen. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. I don't know what you're talking about. Dad is confused. There never was any watch." But Grandpa was shaking his head weakly. "In my bedroom closet, top shelf, the blue velvet box. I showed it to you when I got sick. I told you it was for Michael when he graduated. You promised me, Sarah. You promised me you'd give it to him." My Aunt Sarah grabbed her purse and coat. "I need some air. Dad's hallucinating, and this conversation is upsetting him." She headed for the door. "Sarah, wait," my dad called out, but she was already gone. Uncle David shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should let Dad rest. This is a lot of stress for him." But I wasn't letting this go. I had seen my aunt's reaction. I had heard the fear in her voice. And more importantly, I had seen the clarity in my grandfather's eyes when he described that watch. "Grandpa," I said gently, "tell me more about this watch. What did it look like?" His eyes lit up slightly. "Beautiful piece. White gold case, cream dial, leather strap. Inscribed on the back, 'To William Thompson, with love, Father 1952. It was a graduation gift from my dad when I finished law school. Worth at least $50,000 now, maybe more." $50,000. My stomach dropped. No wonder my aunt had looked terrified. "And you definitely asked Aunt Sarah to give it to me?" 6 months ago, when I first got the diagnosis, I called her over, showed her where it was, told her it was yours. She seemed so happy, said you deserved it after all your hard work in college. His voice was getting weaker, but his memory seemed perfectly clear about this. My dad was quiet, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. Finally, he spoke. "Dad, we're going to figure this out. Don't worry about it right now." But Grandpa gripped my hand again. "Michael, that watch is yours. It was always meant for you. Don't let anyone tell you different. Promise me you'll find it." "I promise, Grandpa." He smiled then, the first real smile I'd seen from him in months, and closed his eyes. Within hours, he was gone. At the funeral 3 days later, Aunt Sarah avoided eye contact with everyone. When I tried to approach her about the watch, she claimed she needed to grieve and would talk later. But something in her manner, the way she clutched her purse and kept looking toward the exit, told me that later might never come. That night, after all the relatives had gone home and the casseroles had been put away, I sat in my dad's kitchen with a decision to make. I could let this go, assume Grandpa had been confused and move on with my life, or I could dig deeper into what was clearly a family secret that someone desperately wanted to keep buried. The memory of my grandfather's clear, hopeful eyes made the choice easy. I was going to find that watch, and I was going to find out exactly who had been lying to a dying man about his final wish. What I discovered would tear my family apart and reveal a level of greed and deception that I never could have imagined. The next morning, I drove to my grandfather's house with my dad. The place felt hollow without Grandpa's presence, but we had a job to do. We needed to find evidence of this watch, and we needed to find it before anyone else had a chance to clean house. "Michael, I need to be honest with you," my dad said as we climbed the stairs to Grandpa's bedroom. "I never knew about any watch either, but your Aunt Sarah has been acting strange for months. She's been coming over here a lot, supposedly to help with Dad's medications and appointments." We reached the bedroom and I went straight to the closet. Top shelf, just like Grandpa had said. I pushed aside old photo albums and Christmas decorations until I found it, a space where something rectangular had clearly been sitting. The dust pattern was unmistakable. "Dad, look at this." He came over and saw the outline immediately. Something was definitely here, recently by the looks of it. I started searching more systematically, and that's when I found the insurance papers. Tucked behind a stack of old tax returns was a folder labeled Personal Property Insurance. Inside were photographs and documentation for several valuable items, including jewelry that had belonged to my grandmother. And there it was, a professional photograph of a pristine white gold watch with a cream-colored face along with an insurance appraisal dated just 2 years ago. Patek Philippe Calatrava, Model 96, circa 1952. Estimated value, $65,000. My dad let out a low whistle. $65,000, Michael. This changes everything. But it got worse. The insurance documentation showed that the watch had been moved to a safety deposit box 6 months ago, right around the time Grandpa said he had talked to Aunt Sarah about giving it to me. The authorized persons on the box were my grandfather and my Aunt Sarah. "She has access to his safety deposit box," I said, feeling sick. "Had access," my dad corrected grimly. "But if she took it out before Dad died, there might not be any legal recourse." I kept searching and found something else, a handwritten note in my grandfather's shaky handwriting dated just 7 months ago. "Reminder, give Michael the Patek Philippe after graduation. Sarah has key to box 247 at First National. Watches his inheritance along with $10,000 cash for college loans." $10,000 in cash too. My hands were shaking as I showed the note to my dad. "We need to call the bank," he said, "and we need to have a serious conversation with Sarah." At First National Bank, the safety deposit box officer confirmed our worst fears. The box had been accessed 3 times in the past 6 months, twice by my grandfather with Sarah present, and once by Sarah alone just 5 weeks ago. "I'm sorry," the officer said, "but I can't tell you what was removed. Client confidentiality." "The client is dead," my dad said firmly. "And we have reason to believe items were taken without proper authorization. You'll need to involve the police for that level of investigation." Back in the car, my dad was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Michael, I think my sister stole your inheritance. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" That evening, I called Aunt Sarah. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice guarded. "Sarah, we need to talk about Grandpa's watch." "Michael, I already told you your grandfather was confused. There is no watch." "Then why do I have insurance documentation and photographs of a 1952 Patek Philippe worth $65,000? And why do bank records show you accessed his safety deposit box alone 5 weeks ago?" The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought she might have hung up. Sarah, I don't know what you're talking about. But her voice was different now, higher, more strained. I'm coming over. We're going to settle this tonight. No, Michael, this isn't a good time. I'm not feeling well. Make time, because if we don't resolve this as a family, I'm going to have to involve the police. Another long pause, then, barely audible, give me an hour. I drove to her house with my dad, both of us tense with anticipation. When Sarah opened the door, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Come in," she said quietly. We sat in her living room, the same room where I'd opened Christmas presents as a child, where I'd played board games during family gatherings. Now it felt like a courtroom. "Sarah," my dad began. Dad was very clear about his intentions. He wanted Michael to have that watch. What happened to it? She stared at her hands for a long moment. When she finally looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Mark lost his job 6 months ago. We're behind on the mortgage. Emma's college tuition is due, and we don't have the money." When Dad showed me that watch and said it was worth so much money. "You stole it," I said flatly. "I borrowed it," she snapped. "I was going to get it back to you. I just needed time to get back on my feet. You let a dying man believe his grandson had received his final gift. You let him die thinking I was taking care of something precious to him. How could you do that?" The tears were flowing freely now. I panicked. When he asked about it, I didn't know what to say. I thought if I just agreed with him, it would make him happy. I never meant for it to go this far. "Where is it now?" my dad asked. Sarah's face crumpled completely. "I sold it." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You sold my grandfather's watch? I got $38,000 for it. I know it was worth more, but I needed the money quickly, and the dealer knew I was desperate." I stood up, pacing now. "Sarah, that wasn't just a watch. That was 4 generations of family history. That was my inheritance, my grandfather's final gift to me. And you sold it to pay your bills? I'll pay you back," she said desperately. "Every penny, with interest. I just need time." "Pay me back with what?" I shouted. "You just said you're broke." My dad had been quiet, but now he spoke with a voice I'd never heard from him before, cold, authoritative. "Sarah, you committed theft. From your own dying father. From your nephew. There's no coming back from this." She looked between us desperately. "Please don't involve the police. I'll figure something out. I'll get the watch back somehow." But I was already pulling out my phone. Some betrayals cut too deep for family loyalty to heal. The real shock was still coming, because what we discovered about where that watch had ended up and who had been helping my aunt all along would reveal that this conspiracy went much deeper than we ever imagined. The police detective assigned to our case was a middle-aged woman named Detective Martinez, who had clearly dealt with family theft cases before. She listened to our story with professional sympathy, but warned us that recovery would be difficult. If she sold it to a legitimate dealer, they're considered a good faith purchaser. Even if we prove theft, getting the actual watch back is complicated. "What about the money she got for it?" I asked. "That we can potentially recover, depending on where it went." That's when things got interesting. Detective Martinez obtained Sarah's bank records with a warrant, and what we discovered made my dad's face go white. "The $38,000 wasn't deposited into Sarah's account," the detective explained. "It was deposited into an account belonging to David Thompson, Uncle David, my dad's brother." "That doesn't make sense," my dad said. "David's doing fine financially. Why would Sarah give him the money?" Detective Martinez looked at us seriously. "Mr. Thompson, I think we need to have a conversation with your brother." That evening, we confronted Uncle David at his house. Unlike Sarah's breakdown, David was defiant from the start. "You have no proof of anything," he said when we laid out what we knew. "We have bank records showing Sarah deposited stolen money into your account," I replied. "Stolen? That's a strong word. Sarah needed help and I helped her. Nothing illegal about family helping family." "With my inheritance," I said, my anger rising. "Your alleged inheritance. A dying old man's confused ramblings don't constitute a legal will." That's when my dad stepped forward. "David, what the hell is wrong with you? This is Dad's watch, this is Michael's inheritance, and you're acting like some kind of criminal defense attorney." David's facade slipped slightly. "Look, Robert, you don't understand the whole situation. Dad was getting senile. He was making promises he couldn't keep, giving away things without thinking about the consequences." "What consequences?" I demanded. "The consequences to the rest of us. You think you're the only grandchild who deserved something? You think Dad should have just given away the most valuable thing he owned to a 25-year-old kid who probably would have sold it within a year? The truth was finally coming out, and it was uglier than I had imagined. So you and Sarah decided to steal it instead. We decided to preserve family wealth. That watch is going to be worth even more in a few years. We were protecting it. By selling it? David hesitated. We didn't sell it. My dad and I exchanged glances. Sarah said she sold it to a dealer for $38,000. Sarah lied. Detective Martinez leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, where is the watch? In my safe, at home. The room went dead silent. After a moment, I found my voice. You have my grandfather's watch in your safe. I have the family watch in my safe, yes. The family watch that he specifically left to Michael, my dad said dangerously. According to who? A sick old man's deathbed rambling? There's no will, Robert. Nothing in writing that would hold up in court. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photograph of the handwritten note we'd found. Actually, there is. David's face changed as he read it. That could be forged. David, Detective Martinez interjected, I think it's time you understood the seriousness of your situation. We have documented evidence of theft, conspiracy, and now we know the location of the stolen property. You need to return that watch immediately, and if I refuse, then you'll be arrested for receiving stolen property and conspiracy to commit theft. David looked between all of us and I could see him calculating his options. Finally, his shoulders sagged. Fine, but I want immunity for cooperating. That's not how this works, Detective Martinez said. But returning the property voluntarily will definitely be looked upon favorably. 20 minutes later, we were in David's home office, watching him open a large safe. Inside were documents, cash, jewelry, and there, in a blue velvet box, exactly as my grandfather had described, was the most beautiful watch I had ever seen. I picked it up with trembling hands. The weight was substantial, the craftsmanship exquisite. And there, engraved on the back in elegant script, to William Thompson with love, Father, 1952. There's something else, David said quietly. He handed me an envelope from the safe. This was with the watch. Inside was a letter in my grandfather's handwriting, to my grandson Michael. This watch has been in our family for 3 generations. My father gave it to me when I became a lawyer, just as his father had given it to him when he started his business. It represents our family's commitment to hard work, integrity, and taking care of each other. I give it to you now, not because you're the oldest grandson, but because you've shown the character that this watch represents. Wear it with pride, and someday pass it on to someone who will honor its legacy. All my love, Grandpa William. The letter was dated just 1 week before he died. As I held the watch and read his words, something inside me broke and healed at the same time. This wasn't just about money or inheritance. This was about a dying man's final wish to connect with his grandson, to pass on something meaningful. How much did Sarah really get? I asked David. Nothing. The whole story about selling it was fabricated. We thought if we made you believe it was gone forever, you'd give up looking for it. The betrayal was complete. Not only had they stolen my inheritance, but they had constructed an elaborate lie to cover their tracks, letting me believe that my grandfather's precious watch was gone forever. But there was still one more surprise waiting, because when Detective Martinez started digging deeper into the conspiracy, what she found about my family's financial situation would explain everything and change how I viewed everyone involved. The investigation revealed that this conspiracy had been much more elaborate than anyone realized. Detective Martinez discovered that Sarah and David had been planning this for months, ever since my grandfather's cancer diagnosis. They knew he was dying, she explained to us at the police station, and they knew about the watch's value from the insurance papers. They started planning how to intercept it before he could give it to you officially. But the most shocking revelation came when she showed us David's financial records. Your uncle isn't in financial trouble, Michael. In fact, he's been quite successful. He has over $200,000 in various accounts. Then why? My dad asked, bewildered. Best I can determine, pure greed. He saw an opportunity to take something valuable and convinced himself he deserved it more than you did. Sarah's situation was more complicated. She really was in financial trouble, but Detective Martinez discovered that David had been the mastermind, convincing her that they were protecting the family wealth. He told her that giving such an expensive watch to a young person was irresponsible, the detective explained. He convinced her that they should hold on to it until you were older, more financially stable, but there was never any real intention of giving it to you. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Sarah, facing financial ruin and genuinely remorseful, agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for a plea deal. David, defiant to the end, hired an expensive lawyer and tried to fight the charges. It didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. The insurance papers, the bank records, the safety deposit box access logs, and most damning of all, my grandfather's handwritten note and letter. During the trial, I had to testify about my grandfather's final days. When I described how he had smiled, believing I already had the watch, how peaceful he looked, thinking his final wish had been fulfilled, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The judge was particularly harsh with David during sentencing. "Mr. Thompson, you stole from your dying father and your nephew. You constructed an elaborate deception to cover your crime, and you showed no remorse until you were caught. This court sentences you to 18 months in prison and orders full restitution for legal costs and emotional damages." Sarah received probation and community service, largely because of her cooperation and genuine remorse. She approached me after the sentencing. "Michael, I know I can never make this right. I know sorry isn't enough, but I want you to know that seeing what this did to Dad in his final days, it will haunt me forever." I looked at this woman who had been like a second mother to me growing up. "Sarah, I forgive you, but I don't think I can ever trust you again." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I hope someday, maybe we can find a way back to being family." "Maybe," I said, "but it won't be the same." 6 months later, I was sitting in my apartment, getting ready for a job interview at a prestigious law firm. I was wearing my grandfather's watch, my watch, and as I looked at it, I thought about legacy and character, and the choices that define us. The watch had gained something in all this drama. It wasn't just a beautiful timepiece anymore. It was a reminder of my grandfather's love, of his faith in my character, and of the importance of integrity in a world where even family can betray you. But there was one more surprise waiting. A week after the trial ended, I received a call from Detective Martinez. "Michael, you might want to come down to the station. We found something else when we executed the final search warrant on David's property." At the station, she handed me another blue velvet box. This was hidden in a different part of his safe. We almost missed it. Inside was a woman's ring with an enormous diamond, along with a note in my grandfather's handwriting, "For Michael's future wife, when the time comes." From Grandma Elizabeth's collection. The ring was appraised at $25,000. "David never mentioned this," Detective Martinez said. "He would have kept it forever." That evening, I called my dad to tell him about the ring. We talked for a long time about family, about greed, about how money can corrupt even the people we think we know best. "Your grandfather would be proud of you," Dad said. "You fought for what was right, even when it was hard." "I fought for him," I replied. "For his memory, for his final wish." "That's what makes you worthy of that watch, son. Now as I write this story, I'm 30 years old. I've worn my grandfather's watch every day for 5 years. It's been with me through job interviews, first dates, my wedding day, and the birth of my first child." David was released from prison last year. He never apologized, never reached out. Sarah and I have slowly begun rebuilding our relationship, though it will never be what it was. But here's what I learned from all this. Family isn't about blood. It's about integrity, loyalty, and keeping your promises, especially the ones you make to people who trust you completely. My grandfather trusted his children to honor his final wish. One of them betrayed that trust for money. The other was so desperate she lost sight of what was right. But in the end, justice prevailed. The watch found its way to me, along with a deeper understanding of what it truly means to be worthy of someone's legacy. Sometimes I catch myself looking at the watch and remembering that hospital room, remembering my grandfather's hopeful eyes, remembering his smile when he thought I already had his gift. He was right to trust me with it. And someday, when I'm old and my grandson has proven himself worthy, I'll pass it on again, along with the story of how love and justice can triumph over greed and betrayal. Because that's what family heirlooms are really about. Not just the object itself, but the values and stories that come with it. And this watch carries the best story of all, the story of a grandfather's love, a family's shame, and a young man's fight for justice. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you for listening. I hope it reminds you to cherish the people who believe in you, to fight for what's right even when it's difficult, and to remember that sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't money or objects. It's the character and integrity that you choose to carry forward. Drop a comment below and let me know what family heirloom or memory means the most to you. And if this story moved you, please subscribe, because everyone deserves to hear stories about justice, family, and never giving up on what's right.